Almighty, we forward in this generation triumphantly. So won't you help to sing these songs of freedom?
Yeah, and of course, a very wonderful afternoon to you out there once again under the sound of my voice.
Redemption song. Redemption song.
Yeah, it's the 26th day in the month of August 2022, and of course, until 19 p.m. Nigerian time, in the studios of King 103.9 FM, our time once again to bring you another exciting edition of World Review on this dial, King 103.9 FM. Yeah, what we do on World Review every Friday afternoons, 2:15 p.m. to 3 p.m. Nigerian time, is to help you make sense of the news that happened outside of the shores of this country, Nigeria, throughout the course of the week. We give you a comprehensive and analytical review of all those news and help you have a perfect understanding of what's going on around the world. Yeah, I'm coming in a new dimension this morning. This afternoon.
That's all I ever had.
Okay, I'm in the studios right now with Aisha Oyedele. Of course, she's the one holding the fort for me, and Glamour, and of course the Miss Demano she have in front of me this morning, sort of, creating some sort of confusion right now. Well, it's good to have you here in the studios. Okay, time is fast spent already. Just like we do every Friday on the show, we start from the African continent to bring you all the news from the African continent. Well, of course, we've got just about 45 minutes on the show, so we can't talk about everything. We bring you the biggest news from the African continent before, of course, we go to other parts of the world to bring you the news that also emerge from there. And once again, today we are going to be starting from the African continent. Okay, last week on the show, we were talking about the Kenyan elections, and of course, we've been talking about the Kenyan elections for the past couple of weeks right now. Well, the elections have come and gone, but stories are still revolving around that particular elections, and the election is threatened with litigations, quite a lot of controversies, and of course, before we get into matters arising from the Kenyan elections, we got an election held in an African country earlier this week, also in Angola precisely. Yeah, the 2022 Angolan general election actually held on the 24th day in the month of August 2022. That was earlier this week on Wednesday. And of course, it was the election to elect the president and of course the National Assembly for the next couple of years in that particular country. So talking about the presidential election and of course the National Assembly election, we have some couple of parties contest in that particular election, namely the MPLA party, which of course is the party of the incumbent president, the UNITA party, the PRS party, the FNLA party, and of course the PHA party. And of course, I've been monitoring proceedings from that particular election. As at this particular report I'm going to be reading to you is as at 12:15 p.m. Nigerian time earlier today, the 26th day in the month of August 2022. About 99.99% of the votes have actually been counted, and this is the comprehensive results of that particular election. Yeah, talking about the MPLA party, which are in English it translates as the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola party. Of course, it is held by the incumbent president, Joao Lourenço, and as it stands right now, they have garnered the biggest amount of numbers from the election that is going on right now. According to the official statistics, 51.1% of the votes have been won by MPLA, the party of the incumbent president in that particular country. And of course, talking about the number of seats they have in the National Assembly, they have a total number of 124 seats right now. Unfortunately, they lost 26 seats from the last election that held back in 2017. Well, it was a tight contest between Joao Lourenço and of course Costa Aldabato Jr., who happens to be the candidate of the UNITA Party. And of course, the UNITA Party translates as the National Union for Total Independence of Angola Party. Well, as at 12:15 p.m. Nigerian time today, 99% of the votes counted. Aldabato Costa Jr. garnered a total number of 44.1% of the votes. And of course, in the National Assembly, the UNITA Party garnered just 90 seats, which happens to be an increase from the seats they had the last time out. The last time out, they had 51 seats. Now, out of the 220 seats, they had 51 seats back in 2015. Now they have 90 seats in the National Assembly, which totals about 39 additional seats added. We're moving forward quickly. The PRS party and the candidate Eduardo Kwangana has just 1.1% of the votes. And talking about the number of seats they have in the National Assembly, just 2 seats. They didn't lose any seat, and of course they didn't get any seats. FLNA party produced Ngola Kabangu as their presidential candidate, and of course, as it stands right now, 1.0% of the votes have been garnered, and of course 2 seats gained in the National Assembly, 1 seat added from the last time out in 2017. And of course, last on the ballot paper right now, as far as I'm concerned, the PHA party held by Flobella Malaquas have garnered a total number of terms in terms of percentage 1.0% of the total number of votes, and of course they've garnered 2 seats in the National Assembly. Well, last time out they didn't have any seats, and this time around they've been able to garner 2 seats for themselves, an increase of 2 seats. So as it stands right now, Joao Lourenco, who happens to be the candidate of the MPLA party, once again the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola party, is set to actually be announced as the winner of that particular election. And of course, the party last time out had 150 seats, but this time around they lost 26 seats, and of course they've just got 124 seats. Like I said earlier, 99% of the votes counted, and of course, all things being equal, Joao Lourenco should be declared as the winner of that election.
Oh, parity as their rabbi, so light to the merchant ships.
Okay, let's come back onto Kenya and of course talk about the litigations that are actually threatening the election results that was announced by Wafula Chebukati just some couple of days ago, declaring William Ruto as the president-elect of Kenya. Well, like I said earlier on last week on the show, Mr. Radial Odinga, who claimed a distant second, actually is challenging that particular results, and according to him, there are quite a lot of irregularities. Okay, let's try as much as possible to brush our memories from last week once again. Gospel according to Ralia Odinga.
But Mr. Chebukati, whose mind appeared made up, did not entertain any discussion of the results, precipitating a walkout by majority of the commissioners, who promptly denounced the results at a press conference. We know what happened next. A majority of the commissioners walked out and held a press conference where they denounced the results. Our view in Azimio is clear.
Well, if you haven't forgotten, last week on Friday, I told you about the Kenyan elections board, the IEBC, actually having about 7 commissioners, and 4 out of the 7 commissioners deciding to walk out before the election results were announced, saying that they can't stand for the announcement that will be made by the chairman of the IEBC. And this is one of the loopholes that Raila Odinga is actually looking to explore in challenging this particular election results in the Supreme Court. Moving forward quickly, Raila Odinga, the losing presidential candidate, earlier this week, I saw the video. It was actually trending on Kenyan Twitter about the truckload of case. They used a truck to actually deliver evidences to the Kenyan Supreme Court to actually challenge this particular election. So talking about one of the things that Mr. Raila Odinga is looking to challenge, a key part of Raila Odinga's case hinges on the role of the chair of the Independent Election and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, Wafula Chebukati. Mr. Odinga actually says that he should not have announced William Ruto as the winner without the agreement of a majority of the commission, and thus usurped their role. And like I said earlier, 4 out of the 7 commissioners did not actually support the announcement of the results, and Mr. Raila Odinga is looking to use this as a loophole. Also, it's reported that Mr. Raila Odinga's lawyer have filed testimony from anti-corruption campaigner John Kitongo, in which he claims to have evidence of widespread systematic manipulation of the computerized results database. Yeah, Mr. Kitongo says a source approached him with evidence that a team of more than 50 people actually worked to digitally alter results from counting stations in Mr. Ruto's favor before uploading them onto the Elections Commission's website. The Mr. Kitongo says one of those involved was Dennis Itumbi, a digital strategist working for the declared winner of the election. So according to Mr. Raila Odinga, is saying that there's a high possibility that the online results were actually hacked. And of course, one of those loopholes that is also looking to explore is Mr. Odinga's legal complaint also highlights what he says are inconsistencies in the official number of people who voted and the percentage given by the election officials for the overall turnout. Well, if I break this down, Mr. Chebukati, who is the chairman of the commission, had initially announced a turnout of 65.4%. Mr. Odinga says the turnout figure would mean that 14.5 million voters must have cast their ballots based on the total number of registered voters. But the final official number of valid votes was 14.2 million. So if we had gone with 65.4%, it should total, a total number of 14.5 million. But at the end of the proceedings, it said that, about 14.2 million people. And of course, even if you have the spoiled votes, you will get around 14.3 million ballots. So Mr. Odinga's legal team is claiming that the commission is unable to account for over 250,000 votes that were cast in the election, excluding the voters who actually casted their votes manually. So like I said, a truckload of evidences were actually delivered to the Supreme Court, to petition against the results of the election. And of course, I've just read out some couple of things that you might be hearing about in the next couple of days, what, Mr. Raila Odinga is challenging. Of course, we keep monitoring proceedings, and if there happens to be any changes, we would, let you know. Yeah, moving forward quickly, leaving matters relating to election. Let's talk about the crisis that has been grappling in the northern part of Europe, Ethiopia, for the past couple of years, about 2 years right now. Well, if you haven't forgotten, we've been talking about it in past editions of the show. Fighting, war actually broke out in the northern region between the Ethiopian federal government in Addis Ababa and, of course, the Tigrayan region in the northern part of the country. And of course, we have talked about what led the build up to this particular war and what led to the fighting right now. Well, there's been a source of ceasefire since March earlier this year, when it was announced that quite a lot of civilians, children and women, are suffering acute hunger, malnutrition, and some couple of unspeakable things in the northern part of the country. So there was a sort of fire between the Tigrayan rebels and, of course, the Ethiopian government to allow humanitarian aid get into the northern part of the country, that's Tigray. Well, Ethiopian government and rebels in the restive Tigray region have now started, the war have broken out once again, and both of them traded blame as fighting erupted earlier this week on Wednesday, and then a month-long, about a 5-month-long truce, and severely denting hopes for lasting peace. Well, fights broke out once again since March when a ceasefire was kind of agreed, and conversations have been ongoing about how this war and the troubles are actually going to be settled. Well, the government has called for the African Union to help meddle in the affair, and the Tigerian Union have said no. But well, the good news was that we had in the past was that they stopped battling. They stopped firing of missiles and of course shooting of soldiers since March, so that humanitarian aids could actually be accessed in the Tigrayan region. But unfortunately, fights broke out once again earlier this week on Wednesday, and of course both sides are actually trading blames right now. Okay, breaking it down, talking about the Taku and the trade of words, a government statement said the Tigray rebels actually attacked Ethiopian forces near Kobo district and have effectively actually broken the ceasefire. According to government sources, it said that the attacks began around dawn on the eastern fronts from Bisoba, Zobel, and the Tekule direction. And the statement actually said, but however, the spokesperson of the TPLF, the Tigrayans People Liberation Front, actually said that the Ethiopian forces launched a large-scale offensive on the rebel positions, and the regime's well-orchestrated campaign and international committee has now been reviewed for the drama that it has always been, he said on Twitter. A statement from the military command of the Tigrayan forces said an extensive offensive actually started in the direction of Chobeba, Janora, Gubagala, Yalo, Alamata, Bala, and the Bisova region. And of course, it said that the assault was designed as an auxiliary attack to enable the occupation of Southern Tigray, with the primary offensive expected from the Western Tigray and Western Gondar. Like I said earlier, we have not been able to confirm how this war actually broke and how the fighting resumed. But both sides, that's from the Ethiopian side and of course the TPLF side, have been trading wars of words right now, accusing each other of starting the fight. Well, like I said earlier, there was a lull in the war since March after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government declared a unilateral truce after nearly 2 years of fighting. Well, the TPLF last week rejected talks under the mediation of the African Union, while the government insisted that that remains the only avenue for dialogue. Well, as it stands right now, the war has resumed, and of course it is said that the humanitarian crisis in the northern part of the country would actually resume. Well, quite a lot of people have been speaking about this right now. The Antonio Gutierrez, the United Nations Secretary General, spoke about this. World Health Organization DG Director General Gebreyesus Ghebreyesus is from the Tigrayan region in Ethiopia. Also spoke about the devastating effects of the war in Tigray, and of course, quite a lot of Tigray and Ethiopian are also worried about why the war actually had to resume. Okay, let's take a quick trip outside of the studio. We get to listen to the voice of the Director General of the WHO, the voice of Antonio Gutierrez, and of course some couple of Ethiopians complaining about why the war had to go down once again. Okay, the first voice you'll be listening to is the grievances of some residents of Addis Ababa in Ethiopia.
I was shocked when I heard the news this morning. We had hoped that we were ready for peace, but now our home is gone. If they start the war, it would not be good for the people of Ethiopia and Tigray. Those who pick up their weapons are not thinking about the people, and we should use Ethiopia. And we have to learn lessons from other countries who have been damaged by war, like Syria and others.
This region has been under siege for more than a year. Imagine a complete blockade of 7 million people for more than a year, and there is no food, there is no medication, no medicine, no electricity, no telecom, no media, nobody can report, and when there is no telephone, I think accessing families is difficult. Of course, I'm from that region. I'm from Tigray, northern part of Ethiopia. But I'm saying this without any bias. What I'm saying is the truth. What I'm saying is what's happening. What I'm saying is the situation is serious. Nowhere in the world you would find a crisis like what you see in the northern part of Ethiopia.
Ladies and gentlemen, the voice of the DG of the World Health Organization, Ghebreyesus Ghebreyesus.
I have many relatives there. I want to send them money. I cannot send them money. They're starving, I know. I cannot help them. I cannot help them. I can help them. I can share from what I have. I cannot do that because they're completely sealed off. I want to speak to them. It's a long time since I have spoken to them. I can't speak to them. I don't know even who is dead or who is alive.
I am deeply shocked and saddened by the news of the resumption of hostilities in Ethiopia. Ethiopians, Tigrayans, Amaras, Oromos, Afars have already suffered too much. My strong appeal is for an immediate cessation of hostilities and for the resumption of peace talks between the government and the TPLF with, at the same time, the full guarantee of humanitarian access to people in need and the reestablishment of public services.
Okay, the last excerpt you had was the voice of the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressing shock and concern over the fighting that has actually resumed and asking for both sides to come together, negotiate, and of course for peace to reign in Ethiopia once again. Yeah, moving forward quickly, leaving walls, talking about something that is related to strike. Earlier this week, the Ghanaian unions of shop owners are actually threatening to go on strike due to the depreciation of the Ghanaian cedi. The Ghana Institute of Freight Forwarders, an umbrella organization for the cleaning agents, said it will actually go on strike on Monday. Shop owners in Ghana have threatened to shut down their establishments next Monday in protest at the depreciation of the Ghanaian cedi, the local currency in that particular country. Yeah, with the exchange rate at Ghana 10 Ghana cedis to 1 United States US dollar, traders are struggling to stay in business as the price of importing and clearing goods keeps rising. Yeah, prices for majority of the essential products and the services in the country have doubled in the past few months, but incomes have actually remained relatively stable. Well, Ghana strike here and there. I mean, just a couple of months ago, or last month precisely, the teachers union actually threatened strike over the cost of living. Also members of the health organization also actually threatened strike, and this time around the shop owners are threatening strike right now. But this was I got those reports as at some couple of days ago, the 24th day in the month of August 2022 actually. Well, we've got development from that particular position, as the union is now saying that they are actually going to work with the government to help to bring a lasting solution to the crisis in the depreciation of the Ghanaian cedi.
We were to embark on our demonstration, and trust you me, we are going to make a definite statement on Monday, and our members have told us that they didn't even want 1 day and that we should do it for 2 days. Thereafter, the regions were calling for 1 week, and that we were going to follow it up the full week with a closure. So that because our problem is such that we need a solution, and that we need something that will
because of our time that is fast spent, we wouldn't be able to take more from that. We also got news from South Africa. The two biggest unions in South Africa, SAFTU and of course COSATU, are actually embarking on a strike over the cost of the high cost of living, the rising cost of living in that particular country. Well, there was strike singing songs from the country's liberation struggle, and thousands actually marched to the president's office demanding reduction in prices. Well, as it stands right now, inflation has hit nearly 8%, the highest in 13 years, and around a third of South Africans are actually unemployed right now. Well, as I said earlier, the South African Federation of Trade Unions, SAFTU, actually around 5,000 people said to take part in the rally in Pretoria. The South African Federation of Trade Unions, SAFTU, and of course COSATU, which happens to be the Congress of South African Trade Unions, are those that have actually called for strike and of course protesting across different regions in that particular country, asking the government to do something about the rising cost of living, and of course do something to provide more work for the unemployed youths in that particular country.
We want government to regulate and to cap petrol prices, diesel and paraffin increases. We want them to subsidize the taxi industry in the same way as the private bus industry receives subsidy. We want to address the crisis in the health to stop
called the National Day of Action in protest against the cost of living in our country. The high petrol increases, food prices, the economy that is not growing, unemployment, inequalities, and poverty.
The cost of living, it's so much for us. And we got children that are schooling, and the parents can't afford to pay the school fees. So we need help from the president. Even the Kubi fare has gone too much. And the bus we got to pay is going up.
The prices demands are too high. We're struggling to buy things at the shop.
More people who are discouraged to go and look for jobs. It is not that there are more people, there is a large amount of people who are employed. So we still believe that our economy is not creating sufficient jobs as it's supposed to be. So we welcome the increase, but we still believe that the economy can do better and we can do more to get more people in employment.
Okay, there you have it, the voice of some of the protesters on itemizing what they want the government to actually do for them. Our living matters, regarding protest and of course strikes. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, last month, they actually declared that the latest Ebola outbreak that they had in that country, which happens to be the 14th outbreak overall in that country, was over. And on past editions of this show, I've told you, processes that are required for a particular virus to be declared as over in a particular country. Of course, there mustn't have been a new case for about 52 days, and of course, they will be monitoring proceedings, monitoring transactions and everything. It is after some couple of months, when they are sure that there are no new cases, that is when the country would actually be declared Ebola virus free. And if you've been following this show, the 14th outbreak, I told you when the 13th outbreak actually ended. Unfortunately, there was someone in the northern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo who had the virus, but unfortunately they didn't know, and they had declared end of the 13th outbreak officially, only to find out that there was someone amongst them who still had, Ebola virus. Well, something of such also happened. Last month, they declared an end to Ebola virus in that country. But unfortunately, more than 2 months after the virus emerged, as it stands right now, last week, however, the World Health Organization said the Democratic Republic of Congo was actually investigating a suspected case. And of course, as I said, the sample from a 46-year-old woman who died on August 15 in Beni City, North Kivu province, actually tested tested positive for Ebola virus, the DR Congo's health ministry said in a statement published earlier on Monday. Well, as it stands right now, when they declared end to the 14th outbreak, it seems that there's someone amidst them who also, as it stands right now, has Ebola virus. And of course, the woman who died earlier this week tested positive. They got the sample August 15. Well, the ministry sought to reassure the public that officials were at work on the ground to actually respond to the situation, and it said that around 160 people have been identified as contact cases. It's added.
Say a 46-year-old woman in the eastern town of Beni was admitted to a hospital earlier this month and treated for other ailments. She later developed symptoms of Ebola and died on August 15th. Tests conducted in a laboratory in Beni confirmed she had Ebola. The DRC's National Institute of Biomedical Research is carrying out further tests to determine whether the patient contracted the viral disease. The World Health Organization says it has sent teams to Beni territory to help the government identify people who came into contact with the patient. Outbreaks of Ebola are common in the DRC.
Okay, checking my time right now. It's 2:48 p.m. Nigerian time in the studios of King 103.9 FM. We spent about roughly 30 minutes talking about the news from the African continent. Okay, the little time that I have in front of me, let's leave the African continent, go to other part of the world. Transmit is possible to bring you the news from there. Earlier this week, the WHO actually reports more than 41,000 cases of monkeypox globally. Yeah, more than 41,000 cases of monkeypox and 12 deaths have actually been reported from 96 countries, with the majority of cases from the United States. The World Health Organization made this known on Thursday. Yeah, the number of cases reported globally declined 21% in the week ending that ended on the 24th day in the month of August, after a month-long trend of rising infections, according to the World Health Organization's latest epidemiological report. There are signs the outbreak is slowing in Europe, where a combination of effective public health measures, behavioral change, and vaccination is helping to actually prevent transmission. The World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus actually made this known in a press briefing earlier this week. Well, it said once again that more than a dozen countries saw a rise in weekly cases numbers, with the highest increase reported in the United States. And they said that over 34% of the current global cases, the count is actually in the United States as it stands right now. Still talking about that, a tragic milestone was reached, according to the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization announced on Thursday that 8 million people had died from COVID-19 in 2022, actually calling it a tragic milestone when all the tools assisted to actually prevent deaths. Nearly 6.45 million deaths have been reported to the WHO since the virus was first detected in China back in 2019, but the WHO chief, the Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus, questioned whether the world was really on top of the pandemic thus far in. This week, we crossed the tragic milestone of 1 million reported deaths so far this year. That is this year in 2022. He actually told a press conference. And according to him, we ask all governments to strengthen their efforts to vaccinate all health workers, older people, and others at the highest risk, on the way to 70% vaccine coverage for the whole population. So, ladies and gentlemen, according to the World Health Organization, the total number of deaths that we got from the coronavirus this year stands at 1 million.
This week, we crossed the tragic milestone of 1 million reported deaths so far this year. We cannot say we're learning to live with COVID-19 when 1 million people have died with COVID-19 this year alone. when we are 2.5 years into the pandemic and have all the tools necessary to prevent this death.
Yeah, moving forward quickly, we told you last week on the show, the First Lady of the United States, Jill Biden, actually tested positive for COVID-19. Well, it happened that a rebound case happened to her earlier this week. The United States First Lady, Jill Biden, has tested positive for COVID-19 once again in a rebound case of COVID-19, but it's not, as it stands right now, she's not experiencing any symptoms. However, her husband, President Joe Biden, actually continues to test negative for the virus. Officials made this known on Wednesday. Yeah, Jill Biden actually tested positive on Wednesday by antigen testing, following a negative test the previous day. The White House Medical Unit has notified close contacts. A deputy communications director actually made this known. Well, quoting them right now, the First Lady has experienced no re-emergence of symptoms. Well, she's not showing symptoms, and she tested negative on the day before testing positive to antigen testing the next day. Quoting them once again, the First Lady has experienced no re-emergence of symptoms and will remain in Delaware, where she has reinitiated isolation process. A deputy communications director, Kelsey Donul, said in a statement. Okay, moving forward quickly, let's round up with this piece of news. The race to replace Boris Johnson as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is still very much hot, and of course it has come down to two men standing right now. Okay, two man standing does not qualify, or two men standing does not qualify. A woman, Liz Truss, and of course Rishi Sunak are the two last candidates contesting for that particular position in a bid to replace Boris Johnson as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. We're talking about campaigns. Campaigns are ongoing right now, and like I said earlier, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak are actually, having two different agendas on their plate right now. Okay, we'll be talking about some of their key policies. Well, as it stands right now, the rising cost of living, and of course the UK inflation rate, which is currently at 10.1%, the highest level in 40 years, with predictions that it could actually climb to 13% in October. Well, as it stands right now, the leadership frontrunner, Liz Truss, has promised that she will embark on tax cuts and reversing increase in national insurance contributions that fund the public health service and welfare payments. She's also proposing to axe taxes on fuel, which pay for the transition to cleaner energy, and rejected stinky plaza solution to the cost of our living crisis, such as the direct government aid. Well, talking about our opponent, Rishi Sunak, he believes that cutting taxes would actually not have any effect on low-income households, as they do not earn enough to pay them anyway. Well, as it stands right now, the former finance minister, that's Rishi Sunak, he has called promises of tax cuts during an economic slump a skyrocketing inflation. He called it a fairy tale, actually. Well, and they have different views on energy and on Brexit also, although Liz Truss was one of those who didn't support Brexit initially, but after it was voted for back in 2016, she has now become, all out and of course all gun blazings for Brexit. And of course, they also differ on financial regulation. But unfortunately, my time is fast spent. We will take a quick trip outside of the studio once again right now and get to listen to these two young mans, battle it out on their economic policies. Should they become the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom?
It is your signature policy, Liz, to carry out these unfunded tax cuts in the hope of stimulating growth.
This whole language, John, of unfunded tax cuts implies the static model, the so-called abacus economics, that the Treasury orthodoxy has promoted for years, but it hasn't worked for our economy, because what we've ended up with...
Yeah, my name is Ajibola Samuel. It was absolutely a pleasure bringing you today's edition of the show. Join me same time and same station for another exciting edition of the show, Word and Review on this dial, King 103.9 FM. Once again, I'm Ajibola Samuel. Have a wonderful weekend ahead of you, ladies and gentlemen. Stay safe. COVID-19 is still very much in our midst out there. Use your nose mask as when necessary. Use the sanitizers. Maintain personal hygiene. This is not the time to kiss and hug. We get, and the time to do that in the future. Stay safe out there once again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ajibola Samuel, and I'm signing out with the arguments between Liz Truss and, of course, Rishi Sunak, their economic policies. And stay safe out there once again. Au revoir.
Is high tax, high spending, and low growth.
And I think unfunded tax cuts are wrong. And you know what? Her Chancellor, Nigel Lawson, agrees with me. The head of her policy unit agrees with me. Norman Lamont agrees with me. All these people who understood Margaret